over 40% of high-earning households in America are functionally living paycheck to paycheck, their vulnerability completely masked by fully funded retirement accounts. According to a recent deep dive into consumer financial health by the Federal Reserve, the collapse of the straight-A student in personal finance is not caused by reckless spending. It is caused by a mathematical trap called over-optimization. Let us look at a prime example, a Reddit user from a personal finance forum. We will call him Griffin. He earns $118,000 a year. His monthly take-home pay is roughly $6,800. Griffin followed the exact blueprint mandated by modern financial algorithms. Trusting the system, he utilized his annual bonus and swept his remaining cash buffer into an aggressive front-loading strategy. In the first 4 months of the year, he dumped $23,000 into his 401k and maxed out his health savings account with $4,150. He was winning the spreadsheet game. Then, in the first week of May 2026, his company executed a structural efficiency reduction. He was handed a termination notice, and he checks his routing account. He sees exactly $850. His rent is $2,400. Why did following the exact rules of wealth accumulation put him precisely 1 week away from eviction? We need to dissect a systemic flaw in modern wealth building, the optimization paradox. The entire fintech ecosystem, the robo-advisors, and the automated optimization frameworks preach the same relentless doctrine. Time in the market beats timing the market. Mathematically, on a sterile screen, the premise is flawless. Running a behavioral economics model, front-loading $23,000 into an S&P 500 index fund in January, rather than dollar-cost averaging it over 12 months, historically yields a higher compound interest return. Assuming an average 8% growth rate, front-loading buys you roughly an extra $900 in yield per year. But here is the cold structural reality the algorithms are programmed to ignore. The algorithm does not consume groceries. The algorithm does not require shelter. The price of that extra $900 in theoretical future wealth was 100% of Griffin's survival margin in the physical world. He traded real-world liquidity for a digital optimization metric. We are dealing with the behavioral economics of frictionless system design. The architecture makes it incredibly easy to automatically sweep your money into locked accounts before your cognitive defenses register the loss. We are conditioned to view idle cash as a systemic failure, a leak in our financial efficiency. By automating investments so aggressively that every spare dollar is immediately locked behind a corporate retirement wall, you are not building wealth. You are stripping away your own financial armor. The rules of economic gravity have fundamentally shifted beneath our feet. Yes, according to a macroeconomic analysis by the Wall Street Journal regarding the 2026 labor market, the rapid integration of artificial intelligence and corporate efficiency restructuring has pushed the average lifespan of a white-collar job to a record low. The illusion of the 10-year career at a single company is statistically dead. Furthermore, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released sobering data showing that the average time it takes for a senior-level professional, someone making over $100,000, to find a replacement job at the exact same salary, has stretched from a historical average of 3.2 months to nearly 6.8 months. Think about the gravity of that metric. That is over half a year of absolute zero cash flow. Now, the front-loading strategy was perfectly engineered for the macroeconomic climate of 2010, a decade characterized by artificially low interest rates, abundant venture capital, and high job security. Today, those identical actions constitute a mathematical trap. In 2026, liquidity is fundamentally more valuable than marginal yield. You cannot pay your landlord with an unrealized capital gain. If the algorithm is mathematically correct, Why is it fatal to human survival? To understand this structural failure, we must visualize Griffin's financial architecture through a mental model I call the Hourglass of Ruin. The top bulb of this hourglass represents his retirement assets. It is heavily concentrated, full of sand, looking phenomenally prosperous on a balance sheet. But the bottleneck of this hourglass? The only mechanism for that wealth to flow down into his physical reality is brutally restricted. It is choked by systemic penalties and tax structures. If Griffin wants to access his own capital to keep a roof over his head, the system punishes him severely. Withdrawing from that 401k before the age of 59 and a half triggers an immediate 10% federal penalty. Simultaneously, the withdrawal is taxed as regular income, which for his tax bracket adds roughly 24%. This means if Griffin requires a rapid $10,000 of cash in hand just to survive the summer, he must liquidate and destroy over $14,000 of his portfolio. That evaporated $4,000 is not just a digital penalty. At his salary rate, that represents exactly 67 hours of stressful, high-level corporate labor. He worked for the system for free for nearly 2 straight weeks just to pay a penalty for accessing his own money. He has to amputate his long-term wealth to stop the short-term bleeding. Meanwhile, the bottom bulb of his hourglass, his actual day-to-day survival liquidity, is completely empty. He optimized the top bulb so perfectly that he mathematically engineered his own bankruptcy at the bottom. This is the precise moment we stop reacting out of fatigue and start executing a defensive strategy. We are turning that lingering financial anxiety into structural math. We must fundamentally redefine the purpose of cash. Every mainstream finance voice will tell you that cash is trash, arguing that inflation is an invisible tax melting your purchasing power by 3% every single year. Over a 30-year timeline, that is mathematically factual. But survival does not operate on a 30-year timeline. Survival is Tuesday morning when the rent is due. We need to stop viewing cash strictly through the lens of return on investment. Cash is not an investment asset designed to make you wealthy. Cash is a behavioral asset designed to keep you rational. It provides a vastly superior metric, return on sleep. When you hold a heavy cash position, you are not falling behind the market. You are actively purchasing a titanium shield that protects your compounding assets from being panic sold. If you lack cash, a sudden economic downturn forces you to liquidate your investments at the exact moment the market is crashing. By holding unsexy, boring cash, you protect the mathematical integrity of your compound interest. How do we tactically restructure the hourglass? We deploy a calculated escape route called the 3-tiered liquidity protocol, or the 6-3 max rule. You do not maximize any locked retirement account until you have built this exact sequential foundation. Tier 1 is your diamond core. This is exactly 6 months of raw, untouchable cash flow, housed in a high-yield savings account. Right now, many of these accounts yield a frictionless 4 to 5%. Let us run the hyper-specific math. If your baseline survival cost, housing, food, and utilities, is exactly $4,000 a month, you require exactly $24,000 sitting in that account. This capital is not deployed to beat the S&P 500. It is deployed to purchase half a year of absolute leverage against your employer and the broader economy, where Tier 2 is your semi-liquid buffer. This entails 3 months of living expenses placed in a standard brokerage account, invested in broad market index funds. The capital here still participates in the market's macroeconomic growth, but if an emergency outlasts your 6-month cash core, you can liquidate these assets and possess cash in your rooting account the very next day. Crucially, you completely bypass the brutal 10% early withdrawal penalty of a locked retirement vehicle. Only after Tiers 1 and 2 are fully funded to the exact dollar do we engage Tier 3. Tier 3 is the max. Now and only now do you set your 401k and HSA to automatic monthly contributions. You dollar cost average. You let the system compound smoothly without ever front-loading and draining your vital lifeblood. Let us bridge this back to Griffin. If he had operated under the 6-3 Max protocol, that termination email on May 5th would not have been a financial death sentence. It would have been a fully funded 6-month paid sabbatical. He would not be staring at an $850 bank balance, feeling his chest tighten with panic. We must break the illusion that safety makes you poorer. Extreme defense is actually the most potent form of long-term offense. When the market inevitably fractures, the individuals holding liquidity do not just survive the storm. They are the only ones with the tactical positioning and the clear headspace to purchase the heavily discounted assets that everyone else is forced to liquidate at the bottom. The opportunity cost of not having cash during a crash is infinitely higher than missing out on a few months of a bull market. Wealth is just deferred liquidity. Survive first, compound later. Do not optimize those numbers on your screen until you have optimized your safety in the physical world. If you are ready to systematically defend your cash flow and master the cold math of financial survival, hit subscribe. Protect your baseline, and I will see you in the next briefing.